Welcome to Icons of Dragon Ball, and joining me on this edition, a very, very special guest. She is a writer, ADR director, performer. You have heard her voice in so many things. Full Metal Panic, Initial D, Soul Eater, Cardcaptor Sakura, Fairy Tail, and of course, the voice of Bulma in Dragon Ball. Please welcome, I'm very, very honored to have her on, talking to me about, everything. Please welcome Monica Rial.
Hi, how are you, Danny? Thanks for having me on, man.
No, thank you for being here. I've been trying to get you on here for a while because you're very impressive in everything that you do.
Well, thank you. I was hoping that maybe you were going to try to list them all off, and I thought, nah, he's not going to do that.
That would be like half an hour.
Oh, I did it once at a panel at a convention. I was like, let's just read through this and see how long it takes. And it took a long time, and I never did it again. It was a one-time thing.
Now, did you do it all from the top of your head? Or
Oh,
most of them?
no. Oh gosh, no. I mean, I can remember, like, I have this weird kind of Rain Man ability to remember like all the anime and all the different names. But no, not just off the top of my head. Usually if you ask me like, hey, what anime have you been in? I kind of look at you like a deer in headlights because it's all coming to me at one time and I don't know what to say first. No, I pulled it up on my phone. There's a website called Anime News Network, and they have a really nice long list of everything. So I just kind of read off the list. Otherwise, I would have been totally stumped. There would have been a whole lot of Full Metal Alchemist, My Hero Academia.
Because you just
So
go
yeah,
in
no.
there and just do your thing, right? Sometimes you just it's like a blur, I assume, right?
Oh gosh, especially now, because now we do the simuldubs, where everything comes on like 2 weeks to a month after it airs in Japan, and it's dubbed and on the Funimation Now website. So yeah, it can be a little crazy because there's days where you go up to Funimation and you're scheduled to work on 8 different things, and you go in one room and you're a grandma, and you go in the next room and you're a cat, and you go in the next room and you're a child, and so yeah, it's hard to keep track sometimes, but for whatever reason, I've always been pretty good at it because I don't know, there's probably a lot of really pertinent information that I could use that I don't have, but I can tell you the characters that I've played. It's so
Right.
weird.
Now, in doing my research for this, I found out something very interesting about you that I did not know.
Uh-oh.
You're Spanish. You are part Spanish. ¿Usted todavía habla español?
Sí, yo puedo hablar español. Yo soy well, my dad. Mi padre es de Galicia, en España. Es en el norte, cerca de Portugal. Un pueblo, ¿cómo se dice? Villa García de Rosa, en Pontevedra, España.
She said, for those who don't speak the language, she said her dad is from Galicia, Spain.
Yes.
So it's too bad because had you started like way earlier and like gone to like Mexico, you could have been like the first person to have dubbed Bulma in Spanish and English. That would have been
I
something.
know. That would have been crazy. It's so funny to me too, the way, that things just come back around, because the whole reason I even knew what Dragon Ball was way back in the day. My brother watched Dragon Ball on television in Spain, and it would come on at like 7 o'clock in the morning, and his Spanish is not very good. So I'd have to get up with him and I'd have to do all the voices. So in my head, I've actually played every character in Dragon Ball before it ever even came to the States, just to my little brother. So it was kind of crazy when I came to the States, and Dragon Ball, I guess it was like 2 or 3 years later, Dragon Ball made its way over, and I'm like, oh my God, this thing is following me. And then here we are all these years later, and I'm like, oh, hey, I'm
So
in
wait, so you're telling me that you watched the Spanish dub of Dragon Ball and would translate it into English for your brother? That's crazy. With
it.
Mario
Yeah.
Castañeda?
Yeah, yeah, it was awesome, and I love it. And I remember the Los Bolas de Dragon song and all that
Right.
stuff. Yeah, like it was really great to watch. And I remember we watched it I think it was like every Thursday. I can't remember, but it was really early in the morning. And we would watch that. And he was so in love with it. Like we had to get him manga, we had to get him every little thing we could find. And of course, it was all in Spanish. So I would have to translate everything for him. And then we got home, and I thought, oh, okay, well, that was fun. He likes Dragon Ball and or Los Bolas de Dragon. And then I'm like, okay, well, I guess that was done. And then it hit here, and we're like, oh, okay. And he got all into it again, and it was pretty awesome though. So I've
What
been
does
watching Dragon Ball forever.
what does he think about how you wound up on the show now? Like that's got to be a trip.
Oh gosh, it was crazy. In fact, when I auditioned and after the fact, like I called him and I'm like, dude, I'm not supposed to tell you this because, NDAs and everything, but I just auditioned for Bulma. And he's like, what? Shut up. And then when I actually found out that I was going to play Bulma, I called him and it was one of those, like, probably the proudest sister moment I've ever had. I'm like, dude, I'm playing Bulma. And he's like, what? And then there was this long string of obscenities, and then we cheered. It was awesome. But yeah,
That's
it's been
amazing.
crazy to come full circle like that. It's so weird, but I mean, I love it. I love it. I wouldn't have it any other way.
It's crazy because when that was airing in the States, the Spanish dub, it was at the same time that the original Saban Ocean dub of DBZ was airing, which is the heavily censored,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
yeah, it was really chopped up. And I remember going on Telemundo because I'm obviously Hispanic, so I'm part Cuban. Well, I'm full Cuban, but I'm part Spaniard because the Spaniards came to Cuba. I'm not
Oh,
gonna go
yeah,
into the
yeah, yeah.
history.
They immigrate. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I'm light skinned Cuban, but we're all mixed up. But anyways, so I just remember it came on and I saw Chala, I had Chala and not Rock the Dragon. I'm like, okay, well this is
Mm-hmm.
interesting. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is uncensored. They're showing the blood. This is
Yeah.
before like the redubs, and I was like, whoa, like. And it was like a moment of discovery for me watching the Spanish dub. And that's crazy because you're probably the only, I think you're the only person that I know of who actually worked on the show, the English side of things, but you saw the Spanish version first. That's such a trip.
Right. It's so weird because I remember like so when I heard it in Japanese, I was really weirded out because by the time I I had seen it in, Spanish, and then I'd seen it in English because that's what my brother had watched. So then when I went in to record and I actually heard the Japanese voices, I was totally thrown for a loop. I'm like, oh wow, they sound totally different than what I was expecting. So
Right?
yeah, I had a different reaction than most anime fans have when they watch it in Japanese and then go, "Whoa, everything sounds weird in English." I was like, "Whoa, everything sounds weird in Japanese."
What a lot of people think that though, but you get used to it. I mean, you
Yeah,
get used to it
you
after a
do. I mean,
while.
there's like I always say, like you should watch both. There's good things, you're gonna like some people in one, some people in the other, and you might like some adaptations better. So always watch both.
So Cynthia Kranz and Mike McFarlane, they both talked to me recently, and one of the things they said was to become a great voice actor or voice actress, you have to become a great actor. And looking at your history, I had read that you had done a lot of performing arts stuff when you were really young. Like, first of all, is that
Hmm.
accurate? And do you agree with that idea that you have to become a great voice actor, or I'm sorry, a great actor to transition into voice acting, smoothly, I guess the word is?
Oh, most definitely. Like I started really acting when I was 12 years old, if you can believe that, like way, way back when. And I started doing theater, and I did all through high school, all through college. In fact, I went to college with Jim Parsons from The Big Bang Theory, who plays Sheldon.
Wow.
'Cause yeah, like we all went to college together. Did a lot of like theater, a lot of film, student film and stuff like that, but mostly theater. And when I ended up working in for voice acting, like it was something I went to an audition and it was something I'd never done before. But if I had not had my skill set as an actor, like there's no way I would have totally failed at it. It also helps too because people don't seem to understand. A lot of people go, "Oh, well, it's voice acting. You just go in there and you read." It's like, well, I mean, kind of. I am reading a script, but I have to be able to sound like I'm not just reading a script. I'm actually feeling those emotions and going through it. And Dragon Ball specifically, and Super, oh my goodness, sometimes it's so emotionally charged. And your body and your brain don't understand that you're acting. They don't understand that you're not actually going through these things. And so it can be very, very, if you're doing it correctly, at the end of a session for Dragon Ball Super, you should be exhausted. You should be like, I have to go take a nap because it's just so taxing. And there's just no way to know that unless you have acting training, like how to tap into that and how to understand what you're feeling, and how to evoke those feelings without actually going through what's happening, being able to go, oh my gosh, okay, so my friend just died. How does that make me feel? It's really hard to do. And I think that having that training is what helps bridge that gap. If you have that acting training, the microphone technique and all that other stuff you can learn through experience, but the actual acting part is what's most important.
No, and definitely that I've heard that from so many people. It's like a fact now. It's not even an opinion. It's like that's a
Right.
fact. It
Right.
just works. So now you went to college with Sheldon, but you also went to college with Jason Douglas. And correct me if I'm wrong, but he got you in, right?
Yeah, Beerus is the reason I'm a voice actor. So way back when, Jason and I were doing, I can't even remember what show we were doing, but we had done several shows together at the University of Houston, and we were hanging out one time, and he showed me his keychain, and I'm like, whoa, dude, you got a little anime dude. I know that stuff because my brother's into it. He's like, yeah, I'm the voice for this character. I'm like, no, you're not. They do all that stuff out in LA. We were in Houston. I'm like, they don't do that in Houston, Texas. He's like, no, seriously, they do. And you should audition because you sound like a kid. And I'm like, thanks, I think.
Right.
So I took the number and I called, and then that weekend they just happened to have auditions that weekend, and it was kind of this weird, like all the planets aligned and it all worked out. And I started working for ADV way back in like the late
90s, right?
1990s. Yeah.
Right.
And so, yeah, I thought it was something that it was going to be, cool to do while I was in college. And then it kind of just became what I do. And I have Mr. Douglas to thank for that. And I'm constantly, every time I see him, I'm like, man, thank you. Because I can't imagine not doing this. Like, I don't know what I'd be doing with my life if I wasn't voice acting. So I'm very grateful.
That's no, and it just seems like such a fun job, just playing
It
with your voice.
is. Yeah, it's super fun. It's super stressful sometimes, and it can be, like I said, exhausting, but it is so much fun, and we all really enjoy it and we love it, and I really hope that people can feel the love and the energy that we put into it, because we do, especially Super. It's a whole bunch of people that we've all worked together for such a long time, and we all really, really, truly care about each other. So I really hope that people, when they watch it, they can feel that we're putting our all into it. But yeah, it's such a fun job. It really, really is. It has its moments where you're like, okay, well, that gig's over. Where's my next meal coming from? But we chose that life, so with the fun, you take the other. But it's mostly fun.
The life of being self-employed, I guess.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is. Nobody warns you about the tax situation. They're like,
Oh, I can tell you stories about the tax
oh, it's
situation.
awful. And it's that time of year. So it's that time where you go, am I sure I want to be an actor? Because this is pretty intense. And I'm like, yes, it doesn't matter. I can get through it. I want to be an actor. I love it. I can't do anything else.
Please don't audit me. Please don't audit
exactly.
me.
Oh, please don't.
I know that feeling.
Oh,
So,
it's awful.
how has the industry changed from when you first started in the late 90s to the way things are now?
Oh, ridiculously. Well, for one, back then we used tape, like literal tape to record. So
VHS tapes.
well, no, yeah, you had VHS tapes, but then also when we recorded to tape. So when you went into the studio, everything wasn't digitized like it is now. Like when I went to work on Yu Yu Hakusho, I remember like you couldn't preview the scene. Like now when we go in and we listen to the Japanese and we watch the scene and then we go back and we dub it with beeps, the little 3 beep system. But back then everything was done to tape. So you didn't get to watch the scene first. You just kind of read the script and went, okay, that's what I'm supposed to do. And then you'd hear the 3 beeps and you'd kind of guess as to how the line was supposed to be read and how the flaps were supposed to go. And then if you messed up, then they'd have to cut the tape and it was like rewind back to where we were. Okay, now start again. So it was very time consuming, very, very slow. And then once it did digitize, there was the whole switch to DVD. And then after a while, we dealt with like a ton of piracy because things just weren't coming out fast enough for people. And then it switched to this digital movement where now everything is streaming, which is, I mean, if I could go back and tell myself, way back in the late 90s, hey, in a few years, people are going to be able to watch like Funimation's entire freaking library for $5.99 a month. So, there used to be those, like, what are they called? The little bumper stickers that said, anime crack is cheaper. And that's just not the case anymore. I mean, I don't
Well, the
know
Blu-rays are
going rate.
expensive.
Right. I don't know the going rate for crack, but I would assume that $5.95 is pretty cheap. But yeah, it's changed so much because it used to be so expensive. If you got a laser disc of something, you were talking hundreds of dollars. Even just a VHS tape of just a couple of episodes would be $50-$60. So to think that for $5.95, or even if you get all the services, maybe, $20-$25 a month, you have all the anime you could ever want at your fingertips, which is crazy.
These kids are so lucky. I remember going to Suncoast at the mall, and
Right.
it's $25 for a VHS tape of 3 Dragon Ball episodes. 3.
Yeah.
3.
Oh yeah.
3.
Oh yeah, I remember those
Yeah.
days. They'll never know. They'll never know how hard we had it.
Yeah. Now, Now I want to talk about like voice actors back then versus now. I feel like voice actors from that era seemed like, I feel like nowadays we're kind of seeing this new era of voice actors, like some of the younger ones coming up that are really like hardcore fans, and they
Yeah.
kind of seem like happy to be there, whereas I feel like some of the older ones, like some of the ones that worked with Harmony Gold back in the day, I feel like a lot of them are more just like, this is a gig, I'm gonna do it, and whatever, I'll make it work. Is that a fair statement to make, that sort of the older voice actors have that more business-minded mentality, or is it just a case-by-case thing?
I think you're onto something. I think that it's a little mix of the two, because basically way back when, if you look at like even back, if you're talking Harmony Gold, you're talking like the late 80s, early
80s,
90s.
yeah.
Yeah. Those guys they didn't know what anime was. Back then it was still called Japanimation and nobody
That's
was quite
right.
sure what it was. So I
Yeah.
think that for them, it's not that they weren't fans, it's that they didn't know what medium they were dealing with. Whereas now it's everywhere. So you have kids now that have grown up on Pokemon and Digimon and Dragon Ball and all these things. So you have people that have now grown up listening to those Harmony Gold people, or even us that have been doing it since the late 90s, and they're like, oh, that's what I want to do. I want to do what they do. Whereas the people who were in the late 80s and the early 90s were all like, oh, look at Mel Blanc. That's what I want to do. I want to be Mel Blanc.
Right, the legend.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a different thing. I think it's great that there are so many anime fans in the industry. I think that's a good thing. I also think that sometimes it can be a bad thing, because you get people who have watched so much anime, especially the early dubs, that maybe weren't as strong as the current dubs.
Different era. Yeah.
Right. So you have a lot of people that kind of learned how to do the thing from people who are still themselves learning how to do the thing. So yeah, I think sometimes they can get kind of stuck in anime style reads and stuff like that. They just need a really good director. Whereas the rest of us, like, we're just actors, and it's like, hey, I'm going to try this really strange read, because why not? Who's going to stop me? But yeah, I think
Go for it.
Yeah, I think that that's the case, is that it just wasn't as widely known back then. And that's why we're seeing so many fans now, is because it's become such a big thing. Like, I go places and people know they understand what I do. And there was a long period of my life where I would tell people I was a voice actor for anime, and they're like, what is a voice actor and what is anime? It's like, okay.
It's a cartoon from Japan.
Exactly. So I'd have to like explain and all that. Whereas now you say I'm a voice actor for anime, and people are like, shut up, which ones? So it's come a long way. It really, really has. But it's cool to see so many fans become a part of an industry. And it's even weirder when you have people that you're working with come up to you and go, I grew up listening to your voice. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like such a grandma right now.
They're
But
young.
thanks. Yeah, they're so young. But thank you. I'll take it.
Quick plug, Monica has a YouTube channel.
I do.
Yes, I will link to that down below so everybody can check that out. And also, Monica will be coming to Kamehacon, so meet Bulma face to face. Bring your Bulma toys. She'll sign them and take pictures and all that good stuff.
Yes, I would pimp my VIP thing, but I think it's already sold out. So
gone.
Sorry, guys,
it's gone.
but you'll hear all about it, I'm sure. I'm so excited. I get to go get drinks with people.
Yeah, no, I can't wait. I can't wait.
It's going to be awesome.
Let's go back to when you first came in to do Bulma. You came in, you said that Jason Douglas got you the audition, but that wasn't for Dragon Ball. That was for the beginning of your career,
right?
Correct?
The very, very, very beginning, like way back in the day.
Was that Hello Kitty? Or before that?
Gosh, it was even before that. My first thing that I did at
Elves.
No, it was Martian Successor Nadeshko.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Way back when. And then right after that, my first two major roles were Miharu in Gasaraki and Natsume in Generator Gall.
Generator. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So when you came into Dragon Ball, you already had tons of experience, so this was a natural. When you came into audition, I just wanted to ask you a couple questions. One, like, how'd you find out about the audition? And two, when you came into audition, how did they direct you? They say, okay, look, did they play a clip of Tiffany Vollmer and say, we want you to sound like her? Or did they say, we want you to sound like Hiromi Sudu? Or did they say, you're playing the richest woman in the world who's a little bratty sometimes, but she's also very caring? And, like, how did that whole thing come about?
Well, it's interesting because when I went into audition, I believe it was through my agency. I think Chris went through my agency and had me come in and audition. And to be honest, I don't remember a whole lot of the audition because I was so nervous. I was so stupid nervous. But I do remember they played Hiromi for me. Like, they played the actual Japanese and just had me play the scene. They did not play Tiffany for me. But I had been watching Dragon Ball with my brother for such a long time that I heard Tiffany and I knew exactly what she sounded like. So it was like I wanted to make sure, like, okay, if I'm going to have to bridge this gap between the Japanese and the English voice that so many people have come to know and love, then how do I do that? And so it's a split moment in this audition thinking, okay, well, I want to be true to the Japanese, but at the same time, I want to pay homage to what Tiffany did, especially because it was for Kai. So it wasn't new material. It's like, hey, it's a retelling of this thing that she's already done. So I didn't want to mimic her. I wanted to put a little bit more of Hiromi in there. But I did try to stay, especially with my voice in the beginning, if you watch Kai, I try to stay a little bit more in that kind of raspy lower range because that was more similar to Tiffany. And there were many times when I was recording where Chris was like, holy crap, you sound so much like her. It's kind of weird. And a lot of people weren't even aware that it had switched in the beginning, which I thought was kind of cool. I'm like, yay, because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to pay homage to her. And now, of course, as it's gone along and I've played Bulma longer, I've kind of gradually made her my own. A lot of that started with the Buu saga in Kai, because I'm like, look, I really want to, I'm an actor, and I'm giving all these like major, like serious, dramatic moments. Like I want to go all out. And I remember Raleigh Pickens, who was the engineer for Kai, was like, that might be a little too real for Dragon Ball. And I'm like, can we try it? And so we left it in. And I remember, Sunny coming up to me afterwards and being like, man, I really had to like up my game. So thanks. And I'm like, hey, cool. We can all like make it darker. Let's make it darker and let's make it happier. But yeah, it all started out by paying homage to Tiffany, and then I started to lean more heavily on Hiromi.
Now, unfortunately, you didn't get the chance to dub the Future Trunks special. That was done way, way back. And I feel like the Bardock and Trunks specials, in my opinion, they desperately need some redubs, because the scripts back then were, let's just say, not the best.
Right.
But you did get a chance to do Future Bulma a little bit in the Trunks arc that's airing so far, right now, actually, and a little bit, with flashbacks and things like that in Kai.
Yeah, in Kai.
So Yeah, and I was going to ask you, but you didn't do the whole special, but I was going to ask you, do you portray future Bulma differently than present Bulma, like purposely? Because I can hear a little bit of a difference, because, future Bulma is more of a tortured soul, all her friends are dead, her husband is dead. This is a very different character than the Bulma of the present day.
Yeah, no, I definitely approach future Bulma very differently, and especially in this future Trunks arc, since we have a little bit more time with her. I want to make sure Bulma's always got this kind of eternal spark. It's kind of like this eternal optimism that even when things are going horribly, she can see the good and she can see the positive in the situation. And so I want to keep that in future Bulma. That's kind of the one thing that comes through, is like, even when everything around her is just failing and falling and she's tired and she's exhausted, and she's been working her butt off to try and save the world, that the one thing that she still has that we remember from Bulma, current Bulma, is that spark, that little bit of spark that keeps her going, that little bit of positivity that's still there. And so I try to focus on that, but she is much more soft-spoken, you'll notice. And I also let it sit a little lower. We usually wait and do future Bulma like at the end of my session after I've been yelling for 4.5 hours or whatever. And then we'll do the full future Bulma stuff, because it does sit in a very different place that's sometimes hard to get into.
That's pretty awesome, actually. That's pretty smart that you save it for the end.
Yeah, because that way, you don't want her. I mean, she's been around a while, so
she's tired.
Yeah, she's tired.
Just like you are that day.
Exactly. At the end of those sessions, because I usually do at least 4-hour sessions. Yeah, at the end of those 4-hour sessions, you're pretty tired. So that's pretty much the best time to like fit it in there. So that's usually what we do.
How do you connect with the character of Bulma specifically? I'll ask you about other characters in a minute, but because you have a character here who, now again, unfortunately, you didn't get to portray her in Dragon Ball, because then you kind of see her. It would have been a totally different experience. But with Bulma, you have the richest woman in the world. She's a genius. Her father's a genius, and in many ways, I feel like Bulma's as important as any other character in the series. I've talked about this before. Bulma not only created the time machine that literally saved everyone, because if it wasn't for that time machine, we know what happened.
Right.
But also, but she created the Dragon Radar. So if it wasn't for the Dragon Radar, there would be no Dragon Ball. So this is a legitimately important character. The first episode of Dragon Ball, the first manga, everything starts with Goku and Bulma. Episode 1 of Dragon Ball is called Buruma and Son Goku. So how do you connect with her? Because she's not an everyday person. She's just, she's a genius. She's, super wealthy. And I'm not saying you're not those things. I'm just saying, how does a...
Well, thank you.
You know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you're... You know what I'm saying.
I totally get it. Well, it's been fun.
Her husband is a former killer.
Right.
I know you don't have that problem.
I mean, I know. No, but I'd be lying if I said that Ron and Vegeta don't have a lot in common.
Right.
He's like in the other room going, yeah. No, it was, in the beginning, it was really hard. I did get to see a little bit of young Bulma, because we dubbed Curse of the Blood Rubies, which is one of the first movies out there.
That's right. That's right. Because I'm sorry, that was the last one. No, you're right.
Good,
in 2010.
It was kind of it was cute to see a little bit of that, because I didn't get to see that Bulma, so it was nice to get to see. Okay, well, that's where she came from. And then of course, watching with my brother, I had seen it all. I just didn't get to partake of it. So I kind of knew where she was coming from, and I was familiar where she had been. In Kai, it was really hard, because it was I'm trying to pay homage, and I'm trying to do this, and I'm trying to do that. So I feel like I really kind of got I got a feel of her probably about a quarter of the way in. And I finally understood, okay, she's sassy, she's positive, she's smart, but she's also sexy, because she has little moments where she uses that to her advantage. We see it in Super a lot.
Right.
So I tried to play on all those things. And in Kai, especially because of the animation style, it just made her kind of manic all the time, because her facial expressions are changing constantly, and I'm trying to match those facial expressions with intent. And so, but it took me a little while. And then once I got a hold of her, I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. she's kind of me on my best days. Like, she's really, really spunky and positive. And she's smart enough that she can build a machine, but she's also smart enough to know when she can, give a little wink and get something that she needs out of somebody. So she is not above using her feminine wiles to get stuff when she needs to. I love,
And she slapped
but
Beerus.
that's my thing is I love where she's
Right.
gone in the movies and in Super, because all of a sudden, not only is she cute and rich and smart, but now she's powerful. Like, she's not afraid of anyone. And I don't know if that's because, she's got Vegeta on her side, or if it's just because she's tired of dealing with everybody's BS. But I have
Yeah.
absolutely loved how she has stood up to Beerus. She has stood up to Frieza. She has stood up to, in the game, she stands up to Cell. She's standing up to the boys all the time. They're constantly like shaking in fear of her. And I think that it's a great message to send to girls too. It's like, look, Bulma may not fight, but these guys couldn't do any of that fighting if it wasn't for her, because she's the one that creates the time machine. She's the one that, does this. She's the one that befriends Whis, and she's the one. So it's kind of like, hey, look, girls, just because you're not, somebody's going to say you can't go out there and fight. Well, number one, screw them. Number two, you're still very important, and you're still a very big part of the story. And I love that they've focused on her attitude a little bit more and gotten her in there, and she's not afraid of anybody, and she's not going to take it. And I love that, because that is very me.
Do you have any favorite scenes? Do you
Oh,
have any favorite scenes you've
gosh,
done?
there's so many. I mean, of course, the slap and the My Bulma from the movie, the Battle of Gods. That's one of my favorites, just because you get the chills, because it's like, okay, finally, you see that Vegeta actually cares. Oh, that's nice. Um, that was one of my favorites. One of my favorite episodes this whole season of Super so far, at least on the more humorous side, is the episode with Whis and Bulma going out to eat, and she's trying to kind of win him over to protect her family, and then Vegeta gets all butthurt because he finds out they're hanging out, and then gives him Bulma's favorite ramen. That's one of my fave episodes, just because it's hilarious, and also because Ian and Sabbath are two of my close friends, so it's kind of fun to live our friendship, through other characters. Um, yeah, and I was surprised in the game when I was playing well, actually, I don't play games because I suck at it. When I was watching my fiance play the game and watching her stand up to everybody, I'm like, yeah, go Bulma, go me. It's pretty rad.
Go me!
It's pretty rad. I love it. I love that she's gotten so strong.
Outside of Bulma,
Hmm.
what has been some of your favorite roles in your career?
Oh my God, there's so many. Everybody asks this question, and I always tell them it's like picking your favorite baby. I've got like 500 babies. It's really hard to pick one. I don't know. I mean, I guess totally antithesis of Bulma. Right now, I'm playing Sakura in Card Captor Sakura Clear Card. And she's totally different than Bulma, but she's super, super fun. It's a really cute, lighthearted anime that's great for the little ones. Um, Suyu in My Hero Academia is awesome, because I get to talk like this all the time, and that's just great. Uh, there's so many. Stalking and Panty and Stalking, because I got to have a foul mouth. Rize and Tokyo Ghoul, because she's crazy. Tanya Degurachoff and Saga of Tanya the Evil, because she's crazier. I mean, there's so many. Oh, Momoko and Ghost Stories, because Ghost Stories. Uh, yeah, there's just so many. I've been so lucky in my career, and I say this all the time, but I really don't know if it's because of my voice being so unique, or if it's because I'm not afraid to look like an idiot. But I always get all the cool characters, and I'm not sure why that is. Like, you know what I mean? They may not be like
Good.
the main character. They may not be the pretty princess, but they're always the cool characters. And so I love every single one of them. It's like having a bunch of favorite children.
What's more engaging to you as an actress? Is it video games, or is it like animation slash like anime or American cartoons, whatever? Is there really a difference in your
You mean
opinion?
like when we're recording for them, or?
Yeah, because like I feel like I know like a lot of voice actors do both, and I just always am curious about which ones are more enjoyable, if there even is one. I mean, or is it case by
I think it
case?
just depends on the medium. Like, I think anime is enjoyable because it is very challenging. Like, we have to match all those lip flaps, and the timing can be hard. I mean, if we didn't have to worry about mouth flaps, anime would be friggin', the dubs would be like stellar. The only reason that we ever have any hiccups now is because, we have to match all the little animation. Whereas with video games, the great thing about that, or prelay animation as it's called, is you go into record first and it's animated later. So you're kind of you have the creativity to do with it whatever you want. If you want to add in a sound, or you want to add in a certain reaction, as long as the director is cool with it, then you're allowed to do whatever you want. I think of, like, in Borderlands 2, I play this gun, and when I came in, they showed me a picture of a gun, and I'm like, "Are you serious? Like, I'm playing a gun? Like, what do you want me to do with that?" And then they started throwing
Right.
ideas, and when I got in the booth and I started, this crazy voice came out, and I started doing all these lines, and that gun went from having like two lines to having like a pretty good chunk of lines, just because we all thought it was so funny. So yeah, you have a lot more leeway to kind of do whatever you want. Whereas with the anime and stuff, the stuff that's not prelay, you really have to pay attention to what's going on visually, because you have to match the visual that's already there.
And the voice of the Japanese, if you're
Yeah,
gonna do that, right? If
exactly.
you're
Well, and
yeah.
you certainly want to make sure, like I tell people, that the Japanese voice is always a good springboard, because if the character is like talking way up here, then you don't want to be like way down in here, because that would sound ridiculous. In the end, it's all up to the director, but yeah, you definitely want to try and match what was there before you.
Now I want to talk real quick about writing, because you're also a
Hmm.
writer. ADR. I don't know too much about that side of the business, to be honest with you. But that's why I was gonna ask you about it. I'm assuming that what you do is you take, I guess, the translation and you kind of make it fit the flaps. Is that what you're actually doing with
Yeah,
that
that's
when you're an ADR
actually,
writer?
that is exactly what we're doing. So what the process is like, when it airs in Japan, then it's sent to a translator, and the translators translate it, and it depending on, like, depending on how good the translator is, you can either come up with something that's already pretty much a workable script, or you have a document that looks like Yoda wrote it. So it just kind of depends on the quality of the translator. Then after translation, it goes to a time coder, and they get the raw video that has a time code up in the top left hand corner, and their job is to mark down every time somebody makes a noise or starts to speak, and it has to be down to the frame, because we use the beep system. um, so yeah, they have to do that, and then it goes to the writer and the adapter, and their job is to look at that translation and then look at the video and go, okay, I have to get the intent of this line in those mouth flaps. And it used to be, way back in the day, you'd hear them, you'd see that they would do that more verbatim, like they would take every single word and try to fit it into every single mouth flap, and that's why you ended up with a lot of very Shatner-esque kind of dubs back then, where people would just pause in the middle of sentences for no reason. Whereas now we try to be a little more careful about that kind of stuff, so it sounds more natural. So we look at each line and look at the intent of that line, and then the intent of that scene, and kind of rework the dialogue from there to make it sound more casual, more laid back, and not so stiff.
Yeah, there's always translation things that just don't make any sense.
Right.
And I know a lot of the elitists, well, I don't want to say elitists, a lot of the purists, because there's nothing wrong with being a purist fan. A lot of them expect to be word for word like the sub, and it just doesn't work, because in Japanese you got two syllables. In English, those two syllables might be like 12.
Right. And I think what a lot
You
of people
know?
don't understand too is that unless you're watching it in the raw Japanese and you speak Japanese, you're still getting a truncated version of the translation. You're not getting a word for word translation usually, because subtitles have to be done within a certain time constraint, because your brain can only process so much information from your eyes at one time. So
That's right.
that's the thing too, is that
That's right.
sometimes these translations are actually having to be kind of concentrated for the viewer, because there's too much information to get across. So I mean, either way, there's pros and cons. I think that these days, especially, depending on, the writer and the show, people try to stick as closely as possible. But I remember I used to get a lot of flack way back in the day. There was a guy that gave me problems because I chose to use the word adorable instead of the word cute. And I'm like, look, dude, they mean the exact same thing. The only one has 4 syllables and one has 1. So sorry. But yeah, I mean, I think that
Right.
for the most part, everybody tries to stick close to it. Now, there are shows like we did a show way back in the day called Ghost Stories where we were told to just throw away the translation and make up your own dub, which that was a once in a lifetime kind of thing. And then you have shows like Panty and Stocking where Gynax, the production studio, basically said, hey, look, we know that Japanese humor and American humor are very different. So we want you to kind of do your own thing as long as the story stays intact. And so it just depends on the situation. We try to stay as close as possible, but still, you have to whip out that thesaurus every once in a while and find a word with a few more syllables,
Right. If you had to fill in somehow.
Right, exactly. And we don't want to just willy-nilly make stuff up if there's nothing there. A lot of times, I used to write for Fairy Tale.
Yes.
And I would use the manga a lot because what would happen is we'd get these translations that were very short and you'd have all these lip flaps to fill. And it's like, well, I don't want to just make stuff up. So I'd get the manga and try to fill in whatever was there to kind of fill in the holes, like the spackle that held it all together. Because, you don't want to it's not your intellectual property. It's somebody else's. You're just adapting it for a different audience. So it's kind of trying to take that and make it work so that people don't look at it and go, wow, none of that's actually canon. How'd that happen? So, it gets difficult. But it's fun. It's like a big, huge puzzle, a very, very difficult, time-consuming puzzle.
That's the thing. I don't think people really understand how difficult this is. Like I don't work in your business, but I know this is not easy. Like because you have to think like in your head. Okay, we have to please the hardcores.
Right.
We have to please the casuals. We have to please the television. If it's going to be a TV dub, you got to censor some things. And how much do we censor it? Do we straight up change the name entirely, like Mr. Satan becoming Hercule?
Right.
These are decisions that aren't easy to make.
Yeah. Oh, totally. And it's a lot of pressure to put on people. And I know that people at Funimation are constantly sweating all of those decisions. And I'm really, really glad that I don't have to do it.
Right.
But
but you are a writer, so sometimes you do. Not as much, but you do sometimes. As a writer.
You have to be ready to make those kinds of decisions. And the thing is that, we've trained the American audiences to look at flaps. So you guys notice if something doesn't fit the flaps, if it looks all wonky. Whereas in Japan, they're much more lenient about flaps because, they just don't care.
They are.
And that's great. But I feel like, sometimes for the purists, you want to leave it closer to the Japanese and just say, oh, screw the flaps. But then there's going to be some 8-year-old that's seeing it for the first time, and he's going to be like
Godzilla in the 80s.
And he's going to be like, it doesn't fit the mouth. Like, that doesn't work. So you have to find a happy medium somewhere in between.
I'm so glad you said that because I consider myself a very hardcore Dragon Ball fan, and I love all versions of it. But that being said, I've pointed out, I've seen many times in the original Z dub in Japan that they don't match the flaps. It doesn't happen too much, but there's been a couple times where it has.
Right.
And obviously it was a rush production. They had to get this out. They couldn't just take their time. But yet I've seen it. Like I've seen it happen. And I'm not going to say it ruins the show, but it definitely is noticeable.
Right. And I think a lot of it is just because, we've all been trained to watch that kind of stuff. It's happened in so many anime that I've worked in where, sometimes people just won't have flaps and they'll start talking and it's like, oh, okay, well, that's perfectly acceptable in Japan. But here somebody's going to be like, no, their mouth isn't moving. So, we have to kind of walk that line in between. We want to make sure that the performances are the best that they can possibly be. So sometimes we're a little more lenient on flaps. But, we're very, very attentive to the little mouths.
Right. Well, that's the biz. Now, you said you don't play video games. What do you do for fun outside of like your career, like voicing, directing, writing, all that stuff? What do you do for fun besides your job,
working?
which is fun, right?
What do I do
You know what I mean?
Working?
Going to cons and things like
that. Yeah, I mean, that's probably some of my favorite stuff is when we go to conventions and we can go to dinner with friends. We have a good group of friends here that we like hanging out with. Like I just went to brunch this morning with Mrs. Sabat and Ian Sinclair's girlfriend. So, we all hang out. We're actual friends. And yeah, so hanging out
That's
with folks
awesome.
that I don't get to see when I'm on the road, that's always one of my favorite things to do. I like to read, which I know is kind of nerdy, but I love it. Other than that,
What do you read?
well, right now I'm reading a book called "You Are a Badass," and it's all about solidifying the idea that I am a badass, and it just it helps you with all this time management. Yeah, motivational time management stuff. I have so many different hats that I wear. I have a YouTube, and I'm a voice actor, and I go to cons, and I do this. But sometimes it's nice to have like a playbook to go, okay, I need to keep all of this in check. How do I do that? And this book kind of helps doing that. But yeah, things like that. I do some needlepoint like an old lady. What else do I do? I drink.
I drink. That's awesome.
Yeah,
That is awesome.
I do watch Ron play games, and I have my own little games that I play, but I'm just not very good at like the big games. We do have a VR, and that's fun. So we'll do that on occasion.
So on your YouTube, or before we close out of here, everybody check out Monica's YouTube. I'll leave links down below. Yeah, you're already giving tips on, for giving away some secrets. Hopefully not too many, but right. What's the most important piece of advice you would give to an aspiring entertainer?
Oh, an aspiring entertainer. I would say make sure that that's your passion. You know what I mean? Like if you are not passionate about whatever it is you're pursuing, whether it's music or acting or whatever, if that's not your 100%, life encompassing passion, then that's going to crack eventually. It's not always easy to be in the entertainment field. Like there's a lot of highs and lows. So the one thing that carries you through all of that is whatever your passion is. Like I can't imagine doing anything other than acting. Like it's such a big, huge part of me that I've been offered positions. I've been offered jobs, and I'm like, no, I can't. As much as it would be great to have stability, I cannot survive if I'm not acting. So yeah, make sure that you're passionate about it. And then learn everything you possibly can about it. Learn about things that you never thought you would need. I mean, I take, singing lessons all the time and acting lessons, and I'm constantly working on new things just to make sure that I'm well-rounded, because you never know what's going to pop up. And gratitude. Oh my God, gratitude is a huge thing. Like make sure that you spend some time every day and look at where you are and where your career is, and be grateful for that. Instead of thinking about what you don't have, think about what you do have and be thankful for that. That's incredibly important.
As a person, I think you should do that, even if you're not going to be an entertainer.
I agree.
Right?
That's just a person thing. I think a lot of people, especially now, we're so materialistic. I think a lot of people think about all the things that other people have, and I want that stuff. And it's like, well, look at what you do have and be appreciative of that, and the other stuff will kind of fall into place.
Thank you so much for taking time to talk to me. I know you're really busy.
Thanks for talking with me, Danny. I had a great time.
No, I appreciate it, and because you're like I said at the beginning of this thing, your resume, you've done more voices in the past 3 years. Like I'm just in the past 5 years, you've been on so many different shows. Like, I mean, I thought Laura Bailey was like super busy, but you're right up there.
Well, I think that like we've been keeping track of my fan group on Facebook. We've been keeping track of my credits. Because I think now I've done more voice acting for anime than anyone in the United States, but I'm only like 200 roles away from like, is it less than 200? I'm only a few hundred roles away from like the top Japanese voice actor. So I just think it'd be really, really funny if the person who has voiced more anime in the world is a Latina girl in Texas.
That would be great for us. I'll tell you that much.
I just think it would be kind of funny. They might not appreciate it, but I think it'd be kind of cool.
Well, the one that'll be hard to top is Scott McNeil. That dude's done.
I know.
Oh my goodness.
And he's such a good guy, man. Yeah, he's fantastic. I adore him.
Right? No, he's a legend too. Mm-hmm. So thank you. And anything you want to plug The floor is yours. We plug the YouTube, but if there's anything else you want to throw at the people, let them have it.
Find me on Twitter and Instagram. I'm at Realisms, RIALISMS, and don't freak out when I reply because I do on occasion.
That's right.
And also, KamehaCon's coming up. Make sure that if you don't already have tickets to KamehaCon, please come see us. And if you can't make it out to KamehaCon, then check my website. It's www.themonicareal.com. I'm not full of myself. There's an Argentinian doctor named Monica Rial, so I am themonicareal.com. My name's pretty common in the Spanish-speaking world. So yeah, check my website, and I'll have convention listings there because I'm doing quite a few of them this year. A lot of them with my anime hubby, Sabbat, and my anime son, Eric. So be sure to catch us out on the road.
Fantastic. Yeah, everybody check that out. And thank you again. And thanks everybody for checking out the interview. We will see y'all next time.